people are going to wonder for many years to come, what was this election about? Right? There was a lot of talk about this election is about saving democracy, preventing tyranny from coming to America. The big bad orange Hitler is ready to take office. But no, this is not what the 2024 election was fundamentally about. Nor was it about important issues that are policy related affecting average Americans today. Not about that. It's not about the economy. It's not about healthcare. It's not even about immigration, although you could make an argument that there's at least more connection there. This election was about authenticity. And more appropriately, it was the lack of authenticity within the Democratic Party. The lack of authenticity that Kamala Harris was able to express in all of her speeches and public appearances for the last 4 years. She's been auditioning for this position, and yet here she was, unable to either bear the burden of this pressure of being the leader of this country, or number two, simply not integrated enough as a person to present a personality that was convincing. She didn't know how to answer questions off script. She relied on a teleprompter. And to be honest, this is a problem with the party. This is a problem with the elite class. I'm guilty of it myself. I'm not reading from a teleprompter right now, but because I'm so conditioned to read from a teleprompter, it might actually seem like I am at this stage. People want to see that you're real, and that you care about them on a real level, that you don't merely want to convey a character. And she was given opportunities on so many occasions to break out of this conception. She could have gone on Rogan. The last week before the election, she had an opportunity to go into the studio and do the very thing that Donald Trump did. The very thing that got him, over 40 million views on YouTube and who knows how much other attention from circulated content on other platforms. Donald Trump took advantage of new media. He took advantage of his asset as someone who speaks on camera and in a conversational setting with a lot of ease, fluidity, and authenticity. And Kamala Harris, I think she was too burdened by what had been, which was the Democratic establishment shoving its ideal down her throat of this is how we conduct business as an elite class of politicians. We rely on scripted theater and very tightly controlled characters in order to craft the narratives that are appropriate for the public. Donald Trump was able to create a coalition of heterodox viewpoints. He was able to welcome people like Robert F. Kennedy into his legion of public support. Who knows how many supporters came from RFK? These are people that are not right-wing fascists or crazy conspiracy theorists as the media likes to portray. These are people who have deep environmental concerns. RFK's career as an environmental attorney was founded on left-wing principles. His concern with food safety, it's a left-wing principle. It's connected with our healthcare system. For all of the attention that we place on things like Medicare for all as liberals, right? Caring about the health of our citizens, providing a higher standard that is more affordable to the people of this country. RFK is that. He's talking about a prophylactic mechanism whereby we don't wait for you to get sick and go to the doctor and pay some absurdly high copay or not have insurance because you got fired from your job. What we do in this country is we actually feed people the fuel they need to be well taken care of, where they don't have to go to the doctor. That's what he's about. And for some reason, the media establishment, which is just another prong of the Democratic Party at this point, the MSNBCs, the CNNs, they were intent on castigating this man's ideals. That's another problem with us. We use words like castigate. These are not words that appeal to the average American. They're words that I like using. They're words that challenge me to speak in a way that I think is more poetic and more appealing to my own ears. But it doesn't necessarily appeal to everyday Americans. And it doesn't necessarily communicate the ideas that we want to get across. It's just how I've been trained to speak. It's no different from someone who doesn't have as much formal education and speaks in a slightly less professional manner, but they're more relatable as a person. Okay? It's the same thing. Nobody's better than anyone else. It's just a matter of training. And unfortunately, if we are going to get along, if we're going to build a unity in this country, a multi-party coalition, a multi-ideology coalition, we have to learn how we communicate to each other, right? And the differences in our styles of communication. Donald Trump was willing to sit down with people that he didn't agree with. Right? He was able to sit down with comedians who would talk about a wide variety of issues. These are things not necessarily related to politics or policy or how he's going to run the country. These are people who just wanted to get to know him as a human. And shouldn't we hold our leaders to that standard? Shouldn't we want to know not just what our leaders are going to do, but who the leaders are? Right? Perhaps who the leaders are will even be an indicator of what they're going to do, because some aspect of their character will shine through in a way that cannot be conveyed in a short 45-second soundbite or a clip that's taken out of context or a brief interview where a bunch of platitudinal questions are asked. The old way of conducting interviews with politicians has to die. That's what we found out here. We have to move past this old style of doing business. And it's a shame that Donald Trump had to be the one that wakes up the left wing to this reality. It is a shame, because is he the best man for the job? No. And I don't think the majority of people who voted for him in an ideal world would say, yeah, this person is the ideal man to lead our country into a new age of enlightenment. No, but they view him as the man of the moment to take us out of the shit that we've dug ourselves into. And we have dug ourselves into a whole lot of shit. One part of this country, one segment of the electorate, has totally forgot about the vast majority of circumstance within the United States. What do I mean? Just look at the electoral map. Look at the fact that it's a sea of red with these tiny dots of centralized liberal support, with a high density of liberal support. And everywhere else, all other regions of America, went for Trump. Why did they go for Trump? Because the economic interests are in favor of coastal and urban centers, and they are not in favor of Americans in other areas of this country. The Thomas Jefferson view of an agrarian society is dying, and the people who have fallen victim to this neglect are deeply resentful that they're being pushed off of the economic ladder. Now, I want to address the inevitable concerns that always come on this channel as a product of me not really going into all of my liberal values. Right? What makes me a true liberal? I voted for Marianne Williamson last night, by the way. Okay, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Kamala. I voted for Marianne Williamson. Why? Obviously not because I thought she was going to win, but because I think her spiritual presence within the Democratic Party is the direction that this party needs to move toward. Right? If we're going to be liberals in the 21st century, if we're going to stand for something that is meaningful to people, to reinvigorate a kind of purpose in the lives of people, we have to connect with a spiritual source. We need spiritual leaders. We need people that believe in an ideal of expanding human consciousness to adapt to this century. This is a super unorthodox idea, to say the least. But it's coming from a dude that converted to a form of Orthodox Judaism through the use of psychedelics. So yeah, I'm going to say some unconventional things. My lifestyle is very unconventional in the backdrop of this century, this time period, in this culture. But I know the amount of meaning and purpose that I feel fueled by on a daily basis. And I know that's something that people are deeply lacking at this moment. And so I know that whatever I've experienced, whatever I've been guided toward, is something worth pursuing. Now, I also know that there was a very clear message sent to me and other residents of Massachusetts who might have a similar outlook on the necessity of expanding consciousness in this era, whereby Massachusetts, that's the state that I'm in, failed to pass the ballot initiative that would legalize psychedelics for medical use. It's an indication that we were not ready for this to pass. We're not ready to unburden ourselves by what has been, to use a famous quotation from a well-known poet. I think that so many of the left-wing initiatives that we are fierce advocates for, I'm talking about healthcare, a system that takes care of its people. I'm talking about an economy that has a more collectivist slant to it. I'm not talking about socialism or communism, but I'm talking about an economic solution that isn't going to come from the minds of Marx, Smith, or Hayek. This is an economics that is yet to be fully fortified in this century, and I think it comes from a real creative boon that is right over the horizon. It's right there. We just have to step through the door and unlock the human imagination that exists behind this kind of self-discovery. That will create a kind of collective wisdom that we've never had access to, or we haven't had access to in a very long time. Right? That's super hippie stuff. This isn't stuff that's going to be condoned by your average Washington advisor or your average political pundit. Talking about the expansion of human consciousness is in some ways antithetical to governance, because governance is based on threat of failure to abide by certain standards. And if you have a real faith in the history of our species and the lineage of this planet, then you're ungovernable to some extent. Right? Then it just becomes a matter of, how do I live a more moral life? How do I live the best life where I can provide for citizens in this society? I think that's what we want to do as liberals. Like, we want to be able to take care of our citizens. And the mistake that we've made is we've assumed that this solution comes from an excess of government. That if we keep stacking on layers of government, if we keep expanding its presence, that we're going to solve all the problems. Government does not solve problems. People solve problems. People solve problems. People who currently live ordinary lives and don't believe they possess the credentials or authority to make a big impact, start believing that they can make a big impact. Start believing that you are the difference, right? Start taking that Gandhi quotation, "Be the change you wish to see," seriously. Start internalizing it. Start becoming someone that creates ripples of change throughout your world. Right? Recognize that in an Alan Watts sense, here's some more mystical wisdom. The world you experience, the reality you are in tune with, is a reflection of you. And when you change your inside qualities, you change your outer world. That's how this species solves its problems. Once we are in tune with the imagination of our species, right? Once we've expanded our imagination, once we have blossomed our creativity, our creative potential, sky's the limit. We're off to the stars. The solutions will come. And there are no perfect solutions, to be clear. We're never going to get rid of pain and suffering It's part of the human condition. And any attempt to anesthetize the public into a state of semi-inebriated submission, whereby people are feeling pleasure mindlessly but aren't connected to anything beyond that, that's not a future that I'm interested in. That's the message for this video. We went in a more spiritual direction, but it's because I fiercely believe this election is about an inauthentic Democratic Party, a party that's supposed to stand for the values of the left, not expressing itself in a way that it is called to be. And if we're going to get this party back on course, we have to start embracing those spiritual ideals and building unity across boundaries.